One other area I just wanted to address was Medicaid. We had talked about before, and I really appreciate you speaking to me offline as well about this. So yes, the Medicaid removes $1 billion for federal flexibility. Is there any detail as to how to achieve those savings in the budget?
Right. There's it's meant to be written like it is. You'll see an amendment today that will give a lot more detail in terms of what we don't want to have happen with that flexibility rider, and I think that's incredibly important, and I want the body to be very tuned into that particular amendment. The details as to what we accomplish are vague, and they are really a reflection of the relationship that the governor and the commissioner have developed with the new administration in Washington. There are things that we have been denied in terms of federal funding that we really feel strong about may be on the table for us. And for instance, you and I talked about this, when we chose to do the Women's Health Program ourselves, because the feds were going to require us to use providers in that program that we didn't feel were appropriate, we basically cut 90% of the funding, federal funding, as a consequence of that. We now have a much friendlier ear in that area. That could be a $200 million play right there alone. And that is something that can be made, a decision that can be made by Secretary Price, who we know is from Georgia, is a bit friendlier to kind of the state of Texas.
Well, I guess just one more question. I guess my concern is that we're putting ourselves in a minimum $8.1 billion hole here, because we have 5.3 with the $1 billion federal flexibility if it's not met, plus the 3.6 plus the 2.5, or I'm sorry, 2.5 plus the 1.8 in foundation school program payment, plus the $1 billion in federal flexibility, plus we're setting a new baseline of 2.8 billion higher with no assurances that oil prices will recover in the near future. What's the best guarantee you can provide that we're not actually putting ourselves in an $8 billion hole?
I can't give you any guarantee of that at all. What I can say is that I think the state's economy is growing. It's growing at a clip that I think will very much serve the needs of Texans. I don't think I'm very hopeful, but I don't have any kind of a crystal ball for sure to say we don't end up in a hole that you described. I think it's unlikely, based on what the conversations that we've had with people who spend their whole life thinking about these things, and they largely exist over at the comptroller's office. But I think Representative Rinaldi, if you look at this budget, it's a very conservative budget, spends over $1 billion less than what we will spend this year. So this budget this year is going to come in at $108 billion of general revenue dedicated. We are going to vote a budget out today that's going to be $106.8 billion, not far off the mark where the Senate is, frankly. They also said there was a need for $2.5 billion somewhere. And so, we are incredibly conservative in this budget to try to get us through this 2-year period of time. I don't think we create a hole that we can't, basically come back from strong. And the other thing to remember is we're probably going to put about $800 million a year back into the ESF. And that's even after we pulled money off to support transportation. So the state of Texas is strong. We're in a little bit of a rough spot from an economic point of view, but we are doing well. And by passing this budget, I think we will do incredibly well, and we'll really set the stage for prosperity in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative.